What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. We have a little bit more time between game weeks this week, so I'm doing something a little bit different. There's lots of talk about hits. We've got a double game week coming up, and there's people talking about taking like -8s, -12s, -16s. I'm thinking of doing something similar myself. So in this video, I want to cover why that is, why hits might be more worthwhile this week than maybe in a normal week, why the normal rules go out of the window, and also how chip strategy and blanks and double game week information is kind of being taken into account when these hits are being taken. Okay, so it's all going to be covered in this video. So let's start off with the standard hit rules. Okay, so usually when you take a hit, it should be for a long-term move. You don't want to take a player out and then straight back in for hits. It's usually not worth it. Generally, if you're looking at taking like 3 to 4 or more hits and you've got a wild card available, then the wild card is usually more beneficial, especially early on in the season. But I don't think that's the case right now. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Obviously, injuries and suspensions, especially to key players. You can't field 11 players, and a player you're getting in is good for the long term. Double game weeks and captaincy. Okay, so if you've not got the absolute prime captaincy candidate, then usually it could be worth a hit to bring them in. So that's the usual rules. Okay, for game week 26. Why hits are being taken more this week, why you should possibly look at it as well is, obviously you can target the double game week in game week 26, so you may or may not get an instant payback, but you take the gamble that's going to happen. You can avoid using your wildcard and or your free hit in one of the upcoming weeks. And again, I'm going to tell you in a second why that's important as well. Some of the players you're bringing in this week have good fixtures from 27 to 31, so they're good long-term moves and you get to target the double. You can obviously get rid of some deadwood from your team as well and potentially target future doubles as well. So I put out on Twitter last night that I was thinking about taking a -12 for my team, possibly even going up to like a -16. And even at that point, I probably still wouldn't have the exact team I would want if I was going to wildcard. So a lot of people, rightly so, they replied to me saying, why are you not just using the wildcard this week? So I want to talk you through why that is. So first of all, I can't use the triple captain in the same week that I wildcard, right? If you could use multiple chips in one week, a lot of people would probably use them this week, but you can't do that. Now, to be honest, if I could save 12 to 16 points worth of hits and get a few other players that I think would make my team better, then that probably is worth using the wildcard over the triple captain, because there will be future double game weeks to use that triple captaincy in. But there are other reasons why I don't want to use the wildcard this week. So one of the reasons is triple captain, but there's a bunch of others as well. So I've got a preference to wildcard after game week 30, okay? There's still lots of games to rearrange for several different teams. We know that obviously game week 26 has got a lot of doubles. Game week 27 has the Burnley double. There's only really game week 28 and 29 before game week 30 that can have more double game weeks put into it. Most of them are going to be after game week 30, and they're not going to probably be in game week 30. Obviously, that's when kind of FA Cup blanks and stuff like that happen. We'll talk about that later on. So because there's so many games coming up, and because I think a lot of the players I've got now who are good up until kind of game week 30-ish, but not necessarily good afterwards, will be in my team, I can get rid of them all. So we've got triple captaincy this week and a preference to wildcard after game week 30. I don't know exactly when it will be, 31, 32, 33. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But I do want to use it afterwards. And I know people say the later on you use it in the season, the less points you can make up. But I don't think I'm going to lose out too much by not using it right now. I think I'll make up more by using it later. There is an outside shot at double game week in 28 and or game week 29, which I'll explain in a second. So if the players that are doubling this week also have a chance to double in 28 or 29, then taking that hit is much more valuable. You're not talking about swapping one player with one fixture to another player with one fixture. You're talking about possibly swapping a player with one fixture to one with two this week and possibly two very soon as well. So that's worth thinking about too. Potentially, they're not necessarily paid back straight away, but they could be. If you're swapping a player with a single game week to a double game week, then boom, you could get the points back straight away and still have a player that's rising in price and has better fixtures coming up, right? And also, it lets you save the free hit. So if you wildcard this week, I don't see why you wouldn't have 3 Liverpool players to target their fixtures and 3 Arsenal players as well. And if you do that, it means you've got a free hit in game week 27. So I think using those 2 chips back to back is just not worthwhile. I think they're going to be better used elsewhere, okay? You could use 1 free hit in 27, but you might as well, in my opinion, take the hits to get those players in because the fixtures are so good, then free hit them out in 27, and then have them back in your team from game week 28 onwards. I don't see the point wildcarding them all in just to then free hit them straight back out the next week. It just doesn't feel like the right use of the chips. Now, with game week 28 and 29, please go and follow Planet FPL Pod on Twitter and Ben Crellin on Twitter, right? Because they've given me a lot of info, and not just me, right? The community as a whole. Planet FPL Pod, do a pod, right? It's on YouTube, it's on Spotify and stuff as well. I'll try and put some links in the description below, but go and follow them. Because James from Planet FPL DM'd me last night when I had a few questions. So essentially, these look like the most likely games that could go into game week 28 or 29. Now, this relies on what happens in kind of Europa League with Leicester and stuff like that as well. But what James was saying to me was that in game week 28, Chelsea pretty much need to play. The reason is they're not going to have too many other free slots to play extra fixtures. And they are one of the teams that are probably going to go kind of through to the latter stages in a lot of competitions as well. So he reckons in 28, Chelsea need to play. So it could be Leicester. That depends on what they do in Europe. If not, it could be Arsenal. So Arsenal could have a double game week in 26, a blank in 27, and then a double game week again in 28. So again, taking hits for those players, this isn't guaranteed that they have a double afterwards, but you're almost taking a bet on that happening. Like, there's a likely chance of it happening. So you're taking that 4-point hit gamble. So another reason that people are looking to take hits this week, and big hits, right? And in game week 29, there is a possibility for Liverpool versus Arsenal. Though when I spoke to James, he said he thought that was less likely. Obviously, as always, no blame goes to anybody that is talking about possible rearrangements, because the whole thing is a mess, and who knows what the Premier League will end up doing. But from what it looks like, there's a good chance that Arsenal have at least one double after game week 27, and it could be Chelsea in 28. Now, I know playing against Chelsea is not the greatest fixture, but it ain't that bad when you're coupling it with Watford and bringing in a player that has a good fixture in game week 26 as well. So that's why I don't want to use the wild card, and that's why I think the hits this week are possibly worth it. So let's talk a little bit about chip strategy and how this all kind of ties together with hits, right? So as I said, there could be, there will be double game weeks after game week 31, and there might be like a mini double game week where there's not necessarily as many fixtures as in 26 and 36, but still more than just kind of 1 or 2. So using the free hit for that could be useful, right? So if you've got 2 free hits, you need to decide whether you're going to use it in game week 27 or game week 30, whichever your team needs it more for, and then preferably you try and save the other one for after game week 30 if you can. You could use them both in game week 27 and 30. I don't think that is like a completely awful idea, but there are a bunch of players that you can use to kind of cover one, if not both of those weeks where you probably don't need to use both your free hits. So I would try and use one for afterwards. So for me, for example, right now, I have no players, 0, that are definitely playing in game week 30. Therefore, that tells me I probably need to free hit that week, no matter what. So I've got to try and get through game week 27 without it if I want to save the other one for after game week 30, okay? If you've only got one, and you've got a team that can get through game week 27 and get through game week 30, you could save your free hit for this hopeful smaller double game week after game week 30, right? If not, again, you decide whether to use it in 27 or 30 based on your team. You're going to have to look up how many players you have for each of those weeks, and we'll talk about that in a second. And I'm definitely wildcarding after game week 30, I think. Possible for game week 28, but I just think we'll gain so much information after game week 30 that it's probably worth saving it for then, especially if, you know, Chelsea and Arsenal, let's say they do double in 28 or 29, you'll probably already have some of those players, and then you can use transfers to bring in more. And if they're no good for you after game week 30, you can just wildcard them out. So I do think the preference is probably going to be to say the wildcard. But you have to be flexible with these things. If things change, if fixtures go in where we weren't expecting them, maybe we change chip strategy, right? Just to confirm, the blank, you should know this already, the blanks in game week 27 are Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea. Chelsea aren't really a big issue right now because no one's really buying them at the moment. You might still have a couple of defenders left over. But obviously Arsenal and Liverpool, if you've got 3 Liverpool, Trent, Salah and, I don't know, Jota and Robertson or whoever it is, and then you also bring in like 2 to 3 Arsenal players, they're all going to miss out in game week 27. So that's going to push you more towards either having to transfer them out in game week 27, and I might transfer out Jota, for example, or using the free hit. So keep that in mind. Now in game week 30, I know this is confusing because I keep saying there's blank game weeks in 30, and obviously a lot of other content creators do as well, but in the FPL site, they're all listed. So essentially, this is all based on the FA Cup 5th round. So I've got the draw there. So Chelsea versus Luton, Palace versus Stoke. Now, whichever Premier League teams win those fixtures, their game in game week 30 will be off. So if Chelsea beat Luton, which is pretty likely, their game in game week 30 will be off, and obviously their opponent can't play either, right? Because they've got no team to face. With this draw, there's only 2 fixtures where Premier League teams against each other, and one of them is Liverpool versus Norwich, so you expect Liverpool to win that, and then Southampton versus West Ham as well. So whichever teams go through, their game will be off. So for example, Southampton versus West Ham, if Southampton win, their game against Burnley would be off in game week 30, but West Ham's wouldn't necessarily be on because I think they play Spurs, right? And Spurs are playing Middlesbrough. So if Spurs beat Middlesbrough, even if West Ham lose to Southampton, their game will still be off. So right now, there's only 6 Premier League teams whose fixtures are definitely on because they play each other and they're out of the FA Cup. So Wolves versus Leeds will be on, Villa versus Arsenal will be on, and Leicester versus Brentford will be on. So let's say you've got like Luca Dean and Coutinho, maybe one Arsenal player, Rafinha, Jimenez. That's already like 5 players that you've got for game week 30. So you might be better off using your free hit in 27. This is going to be very team dependent. For me, I have 0 players from those 6 teams right now. So I'm almost certainly free hit. And even if I bring a few in, I don't think I'm going to be able to get up to enough to not free hit. Obviously, there could be some upsets. If Norwich beat Liverpool, for example, then Liverpool versus Man United would be on in game week 30. So if there's a big upset, it could change our thinking, but this is what it is right now. We'll know who's gone through by the game week 28 deadline. So after game week 27 and before game week 28, we will know who is blanking in game week 30, okay? So if you're looking to target players and taking all this into account and trying to get through 27 or 30 without using your free hit, these are probably the 3 teams you need to look at, right? And the reason that I've not included any of the other teams right now is because they don't have double game weeks. That doesn't mean they're bad options necessarily, but if you can get a double out of them and then they play in game week 27 and game week 30, that's probably better. So Arsenal, definitely worth looking at. They're really good. If you're using the free hit in 27, you absolutely should be looking to buy Arsenal players this week. Apart from Liverpool, they got the best set of fixtures. You can get rid of them in 27 with your free hit. Then they come back to Watford, Leicester, Villa. So the fixtures are good anyway, and they might have another double game week. So they are absolutely worth betting on if you're using the free hit. If you're not using the free hit, you could still buy 1 or 2, but you need to see how that then looks for game week 27. And by the way, you don't have to put out 11 players in game week 27 necessarily. Like for my team, one of my players is Livramento. He might not even start. So realistically, I've only got 10 players anyway. So that's worth considering. And they definitely play in game week 30 against Aston Villa. So these fixtures are from 26 to game week 30, okay? With Wolves, the double game week in 26 is not quite as good, like Leicester at home, Arsenal away, but they do play in 27 against West Ham, and they will play in game week 30 against Leicester, and the 2 fixtures in between are not bad either. So you could look at Jimenez, you could look at a defender like Saiss or Semedo, you could even look at Jose Sarr in goal as well if you need a goalkeeper. And with Arsenal, I kind of already talked about it this week, but Ramsdale, White, Gabriel, Tierney if he's fit, Saka, Lacazette, there's lots of options. Leeds are another possible option. The double is not great, and the game week 27 fixture is not great either against Spurs, but the fixtures afterwards are pretty good, and they play in game week 30 as well. But realistically, Rafinha is your only option. So if I'm taking a bunch of hits this week, these are primarily, not the only teams, but primarily the teams I would be looking at. Now for me, I'm free hitting in game week 30 almost certainly. So if I brought in someone like Son, for example, with a double game week this week, but probably no game week in 30, it doesn't matter to me. So this is very team dependent, and these are all the things you're going to have to think about. So we started off talking about hits, and I've kind of explained why we might not want to use the wildcard and stuff like that, doubles and blanks and things like that. Let's end it talking about how I would try and assess a hit. Now, you don't necessarily need to use websites or numbers or anything like that. At the end of the day, if you've got a player who you think's not completely nailed, they don't have great fixtures coming up, you can bring someone in with a double and maybe another double, and the fixtures are good and they're less money, so therefore you can spend that money elsewhere to upgrade, then great, just take the hit. And I tend to think of each hit in isolation. So some people will get to like a -8, and even if there's another good move they can make for a -4, they don't really want to do it because that means -12. I would look at each separate transfer in isolation just to make it a bit easier. Now, if you're unsure, or if you're like really 50-50 on whether to make the move, you could use a website like fplreview.com and use expected value. For the purposes of this video and kind of what we need this for, expected value, which you'll hear a lot on Twitter, is essentially just expected points. How many points is that player expected to get? So I've got a few examples, especially for some key players that I'm looking to take out, to be honest, and bring in, and maybe you are too. So Ronaldo, game week 26 to 30, is expected to get 19.08 points. Right? It doesn't sound like a lot, but the fixtures are fairly tough. Man City away is tough. Spurs at home could be tough. And that Liverpool away, where I've put some question marks, that game will probably not be on if Liverpool beat Norwich. So he might only have 4 fixtures over the next 5, no double, and has to play Man City and Spurs. So 19.08, it's okay, but it's not amazing. Lacazette, on the other hand, is expected to get 26.47 points. So quite easily, you can see that is more than a 4-point gap. So if you've made a bunch of other transfers, you've still got Ronaldo. Is Ronaldo to Lacazette worth 4 points? Well, apparently he is for the next kind of 5 game weeks. Now, you can drill that down a little bit more, because over the next 2 weeks, Ronaldo has 2 fixtures, and so does Lacazette. So if you're not free hitting in game week 27, possibly that move is less worthwhile. But then you have to take even more things into account. Lacazette's a lot cheaper, so that money can be spent elsewhere. If you are free hitting, of course, then Lacazette's a great option. You can always bench him as well, and then you've got him straight back for what could be Watford away and Chelsea in a double, possibly. By the way, it's not guaranteed, and also kind of Leicester and Liverpool in game week 29, and they play in game week 30. So in some ways, you're spending the points now to get a benefit later on. So this is all going to depend on your free hit. If you're free hitting in 27, I absolutely make this move. And even if you're not, I probably would just gamble the fact that he's got the double straight away in doing that. So that's one way you could look at it. You could always keep Ronaldo for now for the next 2, and then maybe get Lacazette in afterwards. But for me, it's probably just worth making the move now because he's a lot cheaper, right? So there's lots more things to take into account than necessarily just straight up points, okay? So that's one example. Another one is Reguilon, who a lot of us have got. So his expected points are 14.53 over the next 5 game weeks. Again, his fixture in game week 30, that West Ham at home game, will probably not be on. So he's only got 4 game weeks. Whereas Sice also has a double game week. His minutes are much better as well. We expect him to play every single game. And he also plays in game week 30 against Leeds at home. So his expected points or expected value over the next kind of 5 game weeks is 20.73. So again, that difference is more than 4 points. So you could argue that that is worthwhile. But with Reguilon, it's a little bit different because he also has a double game week this week and a fixture in game week 27. And then he plays in 28 and 29 as well. So is it worth doing it when the benefit for Sice comes much later on? Possibly not. Now, you could, again, add extra factors in there. Do you expect Reguilon to start both games against Man City away and Burnley away? I'm not so sure right now. And the other problem is, even if he does, will he definitely play that Leeds game as well? And if he does he play Everton? Then it gets a little bit trickier. So you could apply this for Reguilon to Sice, Reguilon to Cody, Reguilon to Tierney, Gabriel, whoever it is. You could apply the same method of thinking. If you think Reguilon has done enough, i.e. Sessegnon got hooked pretty early, I don't think it was necessarily his fault. It was more a change in formation, but that doesn't look good. Obviously, they did concede a few goals. If you think he gets his place back and he starts both the games, it's probably not worth doing right now. It's probably not worth that extra transfer. But if you're someone who's looking to not use a free hit in game week 30 or 27, and you want a player that's pretty much guaranteed to start all games, it could be worth just making that swap. And again, if you're free hitting in game week 27, it could be worth swapping to an Arsenal defender as well, because you've got really good fixtures this week, really good fixtures after 27 as well. So that's kind of how if I'm unsure about a move, that's how I'll look up the hit. And that is why I'm probably going to take a lot of hits this week. So I could be doing like Ronaldo down to a double game week striker. Fernandes to Salah is obvious. I could even take out maybe Foden, maybe Trossard, and get in some other double game week players who not only are good for this week, but also the coming weeks as well. So that's how I would assess hits. Let me know how many you're thinking of taking in the comments below. If that video was useful, please do give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. And I'll be back tomorrow with team selection.